Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here. You know what this is. This is my review of episode 11 of Star Trek Discovery, The Wolf Inside. Let's get right to it. The Wolf Inside, of course, directly continues on from the previous episode, Despite Yourself. Michael Burnham is aboard the Shenzhou, having taken the role as her captain, and she is accompanied by Lieutenant Ash Tyler, who in the previous episode just killed Dr. Culber. No one seems to be aware of this, however, and back on Discovery, it seems that the prevailing belief is that Stamets killed Culber. Whether he meant to or not is a matter of some debate. Tilly says that it was a result of his addled mind. When I first saw Despite Yourself, I have to admit I was a little bit worried that Stamets would be blamed for Culber's death, and unfortunately it seems that I was proven right here. Captain Burnham aboard the Shenzhou is given orders by the Empire to track down the terrorist leader of rebels against the Empire. This leader is called the Firewolf. She is ordered to bombard the encampment from orbit, killing everyone, but of course Burnham wants to find a different way, even though Lorca himself says that she may have to do this in order to remain under cover. Burnham instead beams down, just her and Tyler, to negotiate with the Firewolf. The Firewolf turns out to be none other than Vok, the albino Klingon from earlier in Discovery, and of course the true identity of Lieutenant Ash Tyler. Burnham manages to gain the trust of the rebels thanks to a mind meld with the mirror Sarek, and implores them to evacuate before she is forced to bombard the surface. In order to gain insights into negotiating with the Klingons of her universe, she asks Vok how is it that he is able to lead such a diverse group of people when his Klingon beliefs demand that he remain pure and untainted by alien races. Vok's answer triggers something within Tyler, and he lashes out, yelling at Vok in Klingon and attacking him with a bat'leth. The mirror Vok gains the upper hand, and Burnham and Tyler leave with the promise that they will not attack the encampment until the evacuation has been completed. Back on the Shenzhou, Burnham confronts Tyler about his lapse on the planet's surface, and during the conversation, Vok's personality clearly takes over. Tyler's personality is pushed aside, Vok comes to the fore and attacks Burnham, very nearly killing her until at the last moment, the slave Saru pushes him off of her. Tyler is sentenced to death for his crime, and Burnham seemingly carries out the sentence, but it's soon revealed to the audience that shortly after being beamed into space, Tyler is recovered by the USS Discovery. It also seems that Burnham has surreptitiously planted the files regarding the USS Defiant on Tyler's person in a brilliant reveal by Saru. Speaking of Discovery, Tilly has been attempting to revive Stamets by using his spore drive technology. The plan seems to be initially successful, but when Stamets flatlines, Saru puts a halt to the experimental procedure and allows the medical staff to work on him, and unfortunately it seems that they lose him. However, long after his supposed death, Stamets' body still shows some signs of life, filling Tilly with hope. Meanwhile, inside Stamets' mind, I'm assuming, we see him within the spore forest, greeted by himself, or at least the mirror version of himself. Meanwhile, back on Shenzhou, even though Burnham has accomplished her mission of getting the Defiant files, Lorca seems very reticent to leave the mirror universe for some reason. They are conferring in Burnham's ready room when a report comes in that another ship has entered orbit and is targeting the encampment before the evacuation is complete. Burnham rushes onto the bridge only to be greeted by the Emperor herself, who turns out to be Philippa Georgiou. The show fades to black and credits roll. For my money, The Wolf Inside is another incredible episode following on the heels of a really great episode. I swear if Discovery is this good right through to the end, we have the best first season of any Star Trek series ever, with the possible exception of the original. I want to talk a little bit about each of the characters in this episode. It seems like each character has something significant to do with the plot, which is really good to see. This is sometimes not the case with Discovery, with its major focus on Michael Burnham. Of course, Burnham has the most to do with this, with a close second being Tyler/Vok, but all of the other characters do get their moments as well. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about Tilly. I'm loving the confidence that I'm seeing in her character here when she takes the initiative and insists to Saru that she be able to try using the spore tech to revive Stamets. This is a side of her character that I'm really enjoying. We saw the false bravado she was displaying when she was playing the mirror Tilly in the last episode, but this is just Tilly here through and through. And when she asks Saru if he will sponsor her attempt to get into the command program, it's just another sign that Tilly is getting confident, and I really love the turn her character is taking here. Also, the raw emotion she shows when she fears that she has lost Stamets is heartbreaking. Mary Wiseman really is a great actor, and I hope she has a long and wonderful career ahead of her. Speaking of Saru, we got some great moments from him in this episode as well. The first we see of him is actually the Mirror Saru, who introduces himself as a slave with no name. There are some very awkward scenes where he is bathing Burnham, and you can tell the revulsion and disgust on Burnham's face as she has to endure this, where obviously this is someone that she respects and admires, being brought so low so as to bathe her and dress her. It's very obvious that Burnham is having a tough time dealing with the mirror universe, and that's really embodied through Saru here. She begins to craft kind of a close relationship with this Saru of the mirror universe, giving him a name, and it's not clear if he already had the name of Saru and is surprised that Burnham knows it, or if he literally had no name from birth, and this is the first that he's being conferred a name. But either way, it's a really lovely scene. And of course, this culminates with this slave Mirror Saru saving Burnham when she's about to be killed by Tyler at the end. So that really pays off, and it really becomes kind of this beautiful relationship, even though one that has a huge power differential, something that Burnham is obviously not comfortable with at all. The first time we see our Saru is in a communication with Michael Burnham shortly after we meet the Mirror Saru, and interestingly enough, both Saru and Burnham keep information from each other. Saru asks Burnham if she has encountered any other Kelpians aboard the Shenzhou in this universe. She lies and says no, not revealing that the mirror counterpart to Saru is her personal slave, possibly to save his feelings and to save them from the awkwardness that would follow there. Saru also keeps information from Burnham, not telling her that Culber has been killed. He tells Tilly that this is to keep her focused on the mission because it's not useful information to her at the moment and would only serve to distract her. Saru also gets an amazing scene near the end of the episode after beaming Tyler back aboard the Discovery. He has a great little speech about Starfleet ideals.
She should have let me die. With honor.
No. We are stranded in a cruel, anarchic world, but we are still Starfleet. We still live and die by Federation law, no matter how heinous your crimes.
This, to me, is what Star Trek is all about, and people who say that Discovery writers don't get Star Trek really need to watch this carefully and listen to this scene because this was perfect. Next up is Stamets. As I said earlier in the review, I was worried that the crew would think that he had killed Culber, and I'm sad that I was right about that. We get another mention from him about the forest. As he's cradling Culber's lifeless body, he says, "The forest is dark, but I can see him through the trees." Is he referring to Culber? Possibly. There's some hope that he might still be back at some point, but I do think he's referring to the mirror version of himself, or at least the possibly many alternate versions of himself in different universes, as we'll see at the end of the episode. And in that final scene, this is a really cool scene, and I really like the mirror version coming to him and saying, okay, well, let's get started now. I'm not sure at all where this part of the story is going, and I really like that. After having some of the earlier parts of the story be predictable, maybe not so much predictable, but when you've got tons of fans online who are able to suss things out, it gets a little more predictable with the Voke Tyler stuff. This, I really don't know where they're going with it, and I'm eager to find out. So I don't obviously think that Stamets is dead. We see him here conversing with his mirror self. And what plans are they hatching within that mycelial forest? Hopefully we find out soon. Speaking of Voke/Tyler, this of course is the official reveal in an episode of his true identity. Both Burnham and the rest of the crew find out about Tyler's true nature, and thankfully he also does cop to killing Culber, so whether or not Stamets was in his right mind or not, they know that he is not responsible for Culber's death. In this episode, Tyler describes Burnham as his tether. I think that perhaps she is the only thing that's keeping Voq from dominating the personality between them. We saw in the previous episode L'Rell's triggering of him didn't quite work, and I think it's that relationship with Burnham that's keeping the Tyler personality around. The scene on the planet's surface where the Voq personality breaks through and he attacks the mirror Voq was really well done. This is a great scene and very off-putting. I love how much of a shock it is to Burnham. And when they get back aboard the Shenzhou, the scene between the two of them where Voq's personality kind of takes over is incredible. Both Shazad Latif's acting as well as Sonequa Martin Green's are really great here. Sonequa in particular, her facial expressions and the emotions that she's having to deal with in this scene are just so well done. And it's really great to see these two act against each other here. The slow piecing together of the information as each of them recognizes the other from their previous encounter aboard the Klingon sarcophagus ship is really well done. And of course, the scene that is his supposed execution was just terrific, and I did not see it coming that he was carrying unknowingly the data about the USS Defiant back to the Discovery. Great stuff. I know I keep raving about that scene, but I just love it. Burnham, of course, is put through the emotional ringer in this episode. I love the idea that she has to put aside her disgust with the mirror universe to fit in. It's a really difficult role to take, but one that she seems to be doing quite well at, and I understand her fear of losing herself in the role. Lieutenant Tyler is, sadly enough, a tether for Burnham as well. Unfortunately, of course, since we know his true nature, that way lies ruin. But in the meantime, it's good that she has this kind of grounding back to her old life, even though, as I say, we know it's doomed to fail. I love that in this character we're getting the quintessential believer in the ideals of the Federation and Starfleet. Again, this is something that Discovery does really well in portraying what Star Trek is really all about. I love her line to Lorca when he says that, you know, she might have to kill all the rebels and she just can't bring herself to do it.
Please, sir, I no longer have my bibs, but I'm still Starfleet. Don't force me to slaughter this coalition of hope.
And finally, her scene at the very end of the episode where she comes face to face with her former captain, or at least the mirror version of her, the Emperor of the Terran Empire, Philippa Georgiou. This is another incredible scene, and I love Sonequa Martin Green's facial acting here. She really conveys the shock and horror. And finally, speaking of facial acting, let's talk about Lorca. So this is kind of a shocking moment in the episode when he reveals that he's willing to have Burnham kill the rebels. He has a great line that just fits really well with his character, unfortunately.
Sometimes the end justifies terrible means.
I think by the end of this episode, it's pretty clear that Lorca has a totally different agenda than just getting the Defiant data. He wants to stay in the mirror universe for some reason. I want you to look closely at his expression at the end of the episode upon seeing the Emperor and who she is. I don't think that he is surprised that it's Georgiou. And there may really be something to the fan theory that he is from the mirror universe. I find this one harder to suss out than the Tyler Voq one. That one I was 100% sure that he was Voq. End of story. This one could go either way. There could be any number of reasons for Lorca's behavior. And for example, what he did at the end of the episode, Into the Forest I Go, in getting the discovery here, whether that was intentional or not, or if he is from the mirror universe or not, I really don't know where this is going, but there are enough big, huge question marks here that there is obviously something going on. Okay, random things that I loved about the episode. First of all, Andorians and Tellarites. And I love the makeup here. I also love that the Andorians' antenna still move. Great holdover from Enterprise. Really wonderful makeup here. Nothing too crazy or outlandish, but still nicely building on what has come before. I've already mentioned the brilliance of using Voke/Tyler to smuggle the data to Discovery, as well as Saru's speech at that moment about Federation ideals. Again, this is what Star Trek is all about to me. The ideals of the Federation, that we don't compromise those, and we don't compromise who we are just because we're in difficult situations. Burnham being the quintessential Star Trek character, her unflinching resolve to abide by Starfleet principles. I also have to say, as a quick aside, I love the introduction of Mirror Sarek, and of course that he has a goatee. That's cool. You know, we gotta have that. But just like in our own universe, Sarek and Spock seem to have taken very different paths. Spock, of course, is a loyal servant of the Empire in about 10 years after this, and the Mirror Sarek is a revolutionary opposing the Empire. Now, in our own universe, Sarek and Spock didn't speak for 18 years when Spock decided to join Starfleet, and I suspect that something very similar happened here, with a huge divide between father and son, what each sees the other should be doing. So this is a really interesting parallel here as well. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't praise this episode for the reveal of the Emperor. This is a really great scene, and Michelle Yeoh is a commanding presence, especially in that costume. What an incredible reveal. And again, like I said before, Burnham's acting in response is terrific. And finally, I want to close out with some predictions about upcoming episodes. First of all, in the last couple episodes, we've had Stamets talking about the palace. Now, I'm wondering if this has something to do with the Imperial Palace of the Empire, where Georgiou reigns over her people. We know that's where they're heading in the next episode, thanks to a sneak preview from After Trek. So I'm wondering about Stamets' warning to don't go into the palace from the last episode. Will we see that play out? As I mentioned earlier, Lorca is definitely up to something. He may be from the Mirror Universe, may not be, we don't know. But like I say, he's definitely up to something. He wants to stay in the Mirror Universe, and I'm hoping we find out the reason for that in the next episode. With regards to the Mirror Universe, I'm wondering at this point if we are spending the rest of the season in the Mirror Universe. It seems we're getting a true Mirror Universe arc, which I'm really enjoying. But I don't know how I feel about the show staying there till the end of the season. Will they find themselves getting back in the next episode or two, or are we there for the remaining 4? What do you guys think? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you want to see them in the Mirror Universe for the rest of the season, or do you want them to get back sooner? Tilly's line in the episode about mycelium spores linking life and death will obviously play into Stamets' ultimate fate, but I wonder if it also plays into the fate of Dr. Culber. And finally, with regards to Tyler/Voke, we've seen Voke establish control in this episode, but I think that the Tyler personality will fight back in the next episode. We know he's tethered to Burnham. He has that love for her that will possibly cause the Tyler personality to fight the Voke personality for dominance. And it's unclear at this stage who will win, but hopefully this isn't the last we've seen of Tyler. I do like that he was saved from execution, even though in the moment I was so mad at him that I was kind of wanting Burnham to execute him, but so relieved when she didn't. And then Saru's speech about Federation ideals kind of put me in my place and made me realize what I was thinking. And it's a great reminder about what Star Trek is all about. We don't summarily execute people. We don't execute people, period. It's just not what we do. And it's really great to see that reflected in the characters. Well, those are my thoughts on the episode, but now I want to hear from you. What did you think of Discovery Episode 11, The Wolf Inside? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and also any predictions you might have for where this story is going. We've got some pretty interesting plot threads that are going to be picked up in future episodes, and personally, I can't wait to see where it goes from here. In the meantime, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Links are all in the description below. And if you are able, it would really help the channel out to help support me on Patreon. The link is both here and in the description below as well. Thank you so much for watching. Like and share this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, as always, live long and prosper.